Welcome everyone to the next Catributor podcast with this week's guest Jingles. Do you want to introduce yourself?
If they don't know me, I need to sack my agent.
Possibly.
I'm back.
True.
Yeah, you were among our first guests, and here we are, back again.
Yeah, I would have been back sooner, but things are getting very busy lately. I'm going to become a member of the. I'm about to become a member of the landed aristocracy.
Moving house and buying a house is such a simple, stress-free process.
Yeah, I haven't heard a thing since the lawyers got involved, except from that time I sent them an irate email asking them why I hadn't heard a thing since the lawyers got involved, and they panicked and phoned me 20 minutes later. But since then, nothing. So I don't know what's going on. Apparently, it takes forever to do a title search.
They're having fun emailing back and forth with another set of lawyers and billing respective people for the time.
Yes, but they're lawyers, so they're not emailing. They're writing things down and sending them through snail mail, which is why it's taking so long. Because there has to be a paper trail. It was like when I was in the Navy, and they started in because we had like paper filing systems, and then around about 2000, they were thinking of introducing what they called an electronic registry system. And I knew, because I was working at Victory Building, which was Second Sea Lord's headquarters at the time, and I just knew that what was going to happen. They'd introduce this brand new, all singing, all dancing electronic registry system where you would. What ended up happening was a document would arrive in the post. And this is the Second Sea Lord's headquarters, so there was never just a document arriving in the post. There were several hundred documents arriving in the post every day. You would have to scan it as a JPEG to store on the electronic system, and then print a copy out and keep it for your records. So instead of making everything easier, it just generated twice the amount of work.
Yeah, that was a system. My now retired stepmom worked for the NHS, and when for the longest time their electronic records was involved, they had to do the thing on the computer, but then they had to literally print it out and like cut out the bit they want and then stick it on a form, and the form then got filed.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think
and the electronic system was terrible. Like I could process a paper document in a third of the time that it took to process the electronic document, and then I still had to process the paper document as well. It's just typical of the way the Navy did things. Anyway, moving on.
We are actually here to talk about World of Warship stuff, and not just sitting,
not just lawyers and paperwork and nah. Right, yes. So let's do that.
Yeah, I mean,
first topic we want to cover is this. I'm sure lots of people have seen Flamu's video by now, but apparently it's been it's a feature, not a bug. The server tick rate for World of Warships has never been particularly high, apparently, and it's been basically unchanged since the game's inception. But because we now have a lot more faster firing ships, suddenly it's a problem. Suddenly, it's an issue.
Yeah.
And
it's an issue that's always been in the game, but never manifested because nothing in the game was happening quickly enough for it to be a problem. And they as much as say, because they've actually now officially addressed it, they as much as say the functionality that causes the problem has been in the game since the very beginning, due to how inconspicuous it is, coupled with the fact that in the early years of World of Warships there just weren't very many fast-firing ships in the game. It remained unnoticed for a long time. It's the last part of that sentence that I want to draw attention to. It remained unnoticed for a long time. Yeah. When they say that, they mean unnoticed by us. They knew it was there.
I suspect, and it's not really addressed by the article, but I suspect a compounding issue was the partly at least the major captain rework. Yeah.
I'll bet you that right at the beginning, some technician, some software engineer at some point said, this is great, but if ever you have a ship that's firing every 2 seconds or faster, this is going to be a problem. And then somebody who earned more money said, that's never going to happen. And if it does, nobody will ever notice.
Yeah.
I mean,
I wouldn't be surprised if they.
Didn't Flammo base this on a year-old forum thread? So basically, the issue was known. It's just that no contributor or no big enough personality got hold of it.
It's Flamu highlighting it that's made Wargaming. Oh, we should probably address this.
Yes.
So it's kind of, in a way, demonstrates the value of, the community side of things, having to sometimes poke companies to actually get them to acknowledge problems.
It's like what happened recently with Gamers Nexus, who ordered a motherboard from Newegg, and when it arrived, they didn't need it because the problem had fixed itself, so they didn't even open the box and they sent it back. And then Newegg said, "No, you've damaged it. There's thermal paste on it, and the motherboard pins are out," because they didn't realise who they were dealing with. He was just another customer, and they kept his $500. And he kicked off, and rightfully so, because apparently it was an open box item. I'm going hilariously off topic here, by the way. It was an open box item. In other words, the box had already been opened, and if not used, then displayed or whatever. And it had been supplied to Newegg with the motherboard socket pins bent. So Newegg had sent it back to the manufacturer. The manufacturer said, "Yeah, we can fix it. It'll cost you $100." Newegg had said, "No, just send it back to us." And then they slapped a sticker on it saying, "Pins bent," and sold it. And then tried to pass it off onto the customer saying, "Yeah, you must have opened it and broken it." Only they didn't realise who they were dealing with. And now they're shitting themselves. And that's kind of what happens when somebody passes a bug along to Flamu to take a look at. It gets noticed.
Yes. So sometimes there's value in having...
Don't you know who I am?
To shout from kind of thing.
Yeah.
What's also interesting with this bug is that there seems to be a different server tick rate between when you manually fire and when you hold down the button. So the game reacts slower when you hold down the button.
There is this was something Flavio was talking about in the video, is that there is a difference between kind of just clicking to fire your guns all at once and holding down your mouse button.
Sequential fire. Yeah. Sequential fire has always been an outright DPS loss because the guns as a whole are not firing, particularly the faster the guns fire. If your guns are firing every 1.9 seconds, double clicking to fire them all in one volley should result in higher DPM than just holding the mouse button down. Because by the time it sequences all the way to the last gun, the first one has already been loaded for a half a second and waiting to fire. So, and they stated in the post that it's easier to implement a fix for the sequential firing mode because that is slower firing anyway. But they're going to have to change fundamental parts of the game code in order to make it work when you're volley firing. And it's not as simple as just making the game update faster. I mean, they could do that, but that would have... the servers would probably shudder to a halt if they tried to implement that. But it was funny, because watching Flamu's video, you could see that it wasn't affecting the reload. The guns were reloading faster. They just weren't firing faster. So you could see the guns loading and waiting and then firing. So it's not a reload issue. It's a firing issue. It's the game's sitting there waiting for the next tick before it acknowledges the fact that you've pressed the fire button, even though the guns are loaded and you're hammering the fire button ready to go.
So, it must be said, I mean, they have given quite a comprehensive answer, so they get points for that. Basically, it boils down to they're not going to increase the server tick rate because this is like literally the only issue extant that we know of that is directly affected by this. Just on the basis of nothing else is really happening that fast in the game. Which
there are only a few ships in the game that this affects. We're talking about fast-firing gunboat destroyers like the Druid and probably the Harugamo. And what are those Dutch ones I can never remember the name of? The ones with two turrets.
Groningen.
Yeah, Friesland and Groningen. It probably affects them too.
Yeah.
And, I mean, I don't know how many ships are in the game. I've got 450. And I don't have all of the ships. So that's a less than 1% affection rate. Affection? You know what I mean. So, yeah, I would not be at all surprised if they realised that this was an issue as soon as they started introducing these rapid-firing gunboat destroyers. And then they'd said, well, okay, how many ships is it going to affect? less than 0.5% of the available ships. How noticeable is it? Hardly at all. How much would it cost to fix it? A lot. It'll be fine. Let it go. And it's only now that somebody's actually noticed it that they're working on a fix.
Yeah, they have said, well, specifically, they are changing how it's calculated for sequential firing, which should address that issue, and then they're working on a fix for the underlying issue.
The underlying actual issue, and that's going to take time.
The other thing that Flamu did talk about, though, which this doesn't really address, is that the way the tick rate works, and Flamu went into it in way more detail, but that it introduces essentially thresholds for some captain skills like Adrenaline Rush and BFT, where there are scenarios where it becomes essentially wasted points, or you're not getting the full value that you should get because of the tick rate creating these thresholds. So you might take so much damage, expect to get such and such a reduction in your reload time, but effectively it doesn't kick in until you've taken even more damage than that kind of thing.
Right.
So,
it occurs to me we should probably explain, just for the benefit of those people who don't watch Flamu's YouTube videos, what exactly is going on here. And that is basically that certain ships with very, very fast reloads, because of the way the server-side response calculations are taken into account, means that skills like basic firing training and adrenaline rush give you effectively zero benefit to your rate of fire. I think you can get it down to 2 seconds, and anything faster than that, the guns will reload. You'll get the benefit in the reload, but the guns will not fire until the server refreshes. So they're essentially a complete waste of points at the moment.
Yes. It's basically that the sad part is that, the reload is sort of, you see what your own client calculates, right? So you see the correct reload, you see when it's ready to fire, but it only talks to the server like
7 times a second.
0.14 seconds or so, right? And so until the next time it talks with the server, your guns can't fire. So if you've got very fast firing guns and you get like a 5% reload bonus from a perk, you probably get nothing at all. And this is not something that they're really addressing this much, because I think someone in the article they said, oh, no, captain skills are working fine. This is not a problem with them. The captain skills are doing what they should, but you still don't get the benefits. So they are not really.
Yeah, the skills work, in theory, because you can see the reload occurring. It's just the guns are sitting around waiting for the server tick to refresh before they accept the fact that the guns have reloaded and have been ready to fire for the last 10th of a second. So it's a small difference, but I mean, some of these captain skills, they cost a lot of points, and you get nothing out of them on certain ships.
It does make sitting down and trying to figure out which captain skills are actually going to be worth it on ships way more complicated for the end user.
Yeah. Although it should be stressed that it does only affect a small number of ships with very rapid firing guns. Once you can get the reload down to like 2 seconds, that's when it starts becoming a problem. And that's not going to be the case for the vast majority of ships. It's not that it isn't a problem, it's just it's not a problem for everything. I
mean, interestingly enough, when you think about it, yes and no, like it's constant TPM, it's the only problem for a few ships, but what everyone has to deal with is that technically when you press your gunfire button, there might be a 0.14 second delay until your ships fire. Not the biggest deal, because it's not that fast moving, but technically your guns don't necessarily fire when you left click, no matter what ship you're in. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, I suppose in that respect, yes, it does actually affect everybody. It's just more noticeable on more rapid firing ships. I mean, the test that Flamu did, he had a ship with no equipment, no captain skills, and he fired the guns continuously for a minute and fired 136 shells. And then he loaded up a captain with all of the skills, all of the equipment, and he fired continuously for 1 minute and fired 136 shells. What's the point?
I mean, I also wonder why, like, for the sequential fire, I mean, that's what they said their fixes, but for sequential fire, the guns are checked only half as often. Like, who implemented that? It's like, okay, if you hold down the mouse button, probably because you want to fire that quickly, we'll just don't check as often if you want to fire.
Apparently the Big World game engine was originally developed for an MMO or something like that.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. This is going way back. It's not been used for that many games, so it was originally meant as an MMO engine.
And you don't need stupidly fast server refreshers for an MMO. You're not playing Fortnite or Counter-Strike Global Offensive here. So they just never really. And World of Warships, you would never really you wouldn't think that it would manifest, because obviously World of Tanks uses a modified version of the same game engine, but it's the same basic underlying code. You would have thought that in a faster-paced game like World of Tanks, the problem would have been noticed there first. But in World of Tanks, you don't really have guns that fire every 2 seconds either, even on the autoloaders. So it's unusual that it would appear the problem would manifest first in a much slower-paced game like World of Warships.
I mean, that's triggered a memory though. I mean, do you remember when the Panzer 1C was first introduced and there were just hordes and hordes of them, and it was actually affecting game performance?
Yeah, that's a good point actually, because with all these tiny little tanks zipping around at 70 kilometers per hour, blazing away with very rapid firing autocannons, you're watching your frame rates tank the second you got swarmed by by two or more of them. But they had that issue right at the beginning of World of Tanks as well with the T-54. They called it the flying saucer, not because of the shape of the turret, but because it travelled too quickly for the game to update.
Yeah,
and so it would rubber band around the map. You would aim at it, but it wasn't where you were actually aiming at. It's just that the server hadn't updated.
Didn't they have to increase spotting checks?
That was another thing. Well? I can clearly remember I'm sitting there, I'm on Ensk, and I've got my gun pointing down the street because I can see on the mini-map that a light tank is about to cross my T. And I'm sitting there aiming at it, and it didn't appear until it was 3/4 of the way across the street because of how infrequently per second the server polled to refresh everything. So I could see it was coming, my gun was aimed, wasn't moving the barrel, wasn't moving the turret, and the tank was across the street and gone before I got the opportunity to shoot at it, before I even saw it. And I did a couple of videos on that sort of thing, pointing out how bloody annoying it was. And after that, they updated the frequency at which World of Tanks polls the server. But that only really became a thing when they started introducing all kinds of tanks that could do 60 kilometers per hour or more. So yeah, they kind of had the same thing in World of Tanks several years back.
Yeah, it's kind of not maybe that surprising dealing with. I mean, a gaming company generally. I'm not going to single out Wargaming for this. They're doing this in a very reactive rather than a proactive manner, because it's going to cost them time and money to do it.
I'm sure they knew that this was a problem, but they did a damage containment exercise on it. How many ships is it going to affect? 3. How likely is it that anybody's going to notice? Extremely unlikely. Let it ride. And it wasn't, and obviously it wasn't until it was noticed that and with the speed at which they've got this statement prepared, that they knew this was an issue.
I wonder though if
nobody's had to investigate anything here, right? They've had this in a drawer somewhere waiting to be wheeled out, or at least the data.
I wonder though, like if everybody, I mean, they're a big company and we all know communications isn't their best, the best trait. So I wonder if, for example, the people who come up with ship stats knew that there was an issue with the mechanics. I mean, some software engineer probably knew, but how many people in the company were aware of this? Because, for example, is the Force Sherman or so? Isn't it like one of the most fast-firing ships that's soon going to be released, like a destroyer, right? And it's like they have, despite the fact that obviously part of Wargaming knew this, they have not changed the design, so they kept making ships that are affected. I mean, it's actually, the question is, are base reloads even affected? Because when you think about it, unless a base reload is a multiplication of the tick rate, you don't even get your full base reload on certain ships, right?
That depends on how they calculate the base reload. I mean, we know how they calculate it, but how the server processes it, we don't know how that happens. It might be the problem, but we don't know.
Yeah, because I have a feeling that they just completely ignored the problem and they haven't tried to work around it, even though if there's an issue that is existing but you don't want to fix it, you can try to work around it. But Wargaming was like, No.
Yeah, they've just let it go. Like I said, it's not an issue until you get ships in the game with a sufficiently high rate of fire, either the base rate of fire or with modifiers and skills taken into account, where that reload gets down to around 2 seconds or below, when you start seeing no benefit. And it never seems to go below 2 seconds. Even though the reload is like 1.9, 1.8 seconds, the guns aren't firing 1.9 and 1.8 seconds. It's every 2 seconds, give or take a fraction of a second either side. And they keep designing and putting in. Actually, we can talk about that because there's new ships on the dev blog that are also going to be affected by this problem. And they have to know that that's going to happen, but nobody will notice. It'll be fine. It's just, we'll worry about this when people kick up a fuss, which is exactly what's happened.
So I guess the moral of the story is we have to keep kicking up a fuss.
Yeah,
to get them to do things sometimes.
Yeah, you have to keep an eye on them and not let them get away with stuff, which has always been the case with wargaming.
Well, I mean, with this we can like
keep them honest.
Yeah, tie into the important message for the World of Warships community, which is, I guess, sort of a follow-up on the statement that what half a year or so happened.
Yeah, 6 months. Kind of a good. This is from the development blog.
Yes,
this was posted on the 8th of February, and it's a follow-up to the whole. What are we calling it? Community contributor exodus shitstorm of about 6 months ago.
CC Rework.
Mousegate.
Yeah. Little white mousegate. So this is a follow-up to that, basically saying what they have done, the promises that they have delivered on, of all the promises that they made 6 months ago. So first of all, communication from wargaming. This is a good thing, I suppose. It seems relatively honest, although I was kind of disappointed by the stuff that wasn't mentioned rather than the stuff that was mentioned. But yeah, I mean, random mechanics. Wow. Well, I guess they couldn't call them surprise mechanics. Had to come up with another word for it. We're talking about loot boxes here. They have disclosed the drop rates for the loot boxes. They said they would do it. They actually did it earlier than I was expecting them to. I was thinking that they were going to let it ride for Christmas to get the maximum possible money out of it, but they did it in time for Christmas. Didn't have to. They did. I suspect that the reason why they were so good about this, because I'm how can I put this? I am reluctant to give wargaming a free pass on anything. I suspect that my phone is about to go off. And I also suspect that they knew that this was the sort of thing that was going to be legislated sooner rather than later anyway. It didn't cost them anything to do this, so they can get a PR win by disclosing the drop rates on their loot boxes sooner rather than later, and honestly be able to say, there you go, we said we would do it, we did it. Because it's not costing them anything, and this is the sort of thing that is probably going to be legislated and they'll be forced to do sooner rather than later. But I still have to give them credit for it. It's something they said they would do. It was at the top of the list of people's complaints. They did do it, and they did it earlier than they needed to. So fair enough. They get a point for that one.
Oh, yeah.
Second one on the list, unless anybody wants to add to that.
Oh, no. I think you covered it.
Second one on the list, feedback and communication. They've published their plans for the game for the next 6 months. They plan to update the roadmap every quarter, and they have been pushing out a lot more waterline videos and streams. They have been getting better at communication. Again, you kind of have to give them credit for that. They've got the waterline series, they've got the hotfix series, official Discord, more stuff on the development blog. I'm happy to see that they haven't just crowbarred submarines in the state that they were in at the time they said they were going to put them in. I'm not convinced that they can actually make them work in random battles. Their submarines still strike me as a very badly designed one-trick pony. They're good for one thing and one thing only. They're just bad destroyers. I mean, they've implemented them in a completely unrealistic way. I mean, I know it's not a simulator, it's an arcade game, but at the same time, come on.
Yeah, they bear almost no relation to the actual historical use of subs in that period.
Got submarines fire. I mean, the Russians experimented with hydrogen peroxide as a fuel for their torpedoes, and even they couldn't get the torpedoes to go as fast as some of the torpedoes of these things. But yeah, whatever. Good news. They're giving them additional testing and tweaking. I remain unconvinced that they'll ever be able. I mean, I think they could make submarines work in the convoy game mode, which you'd think would be exactly the sort of thing that they were suited for. But they were the one class of vessel that you couldn't take into the convoy game mode. I mean, what the fuck? You might have to bleep that out. Sorry, but seriously, what the fuck? I mean, come on. It was a gimme, a complete no-brainer, but they drop. Whatever. Anyway, less said about submarines, the better. Distribution methods for new ships. Yeah. I don't know if you can remember. I can't even remember if you were both there. Pretty sure PointyHairedJedi wasn't, but the first community contributor summit in St. Petersburg.
Did 20 of those, so I definitely wasn't.
Yeah,
I wasn't.
Okay. They were talking about people had too much free experience, too much experience stockpiled on the ships, so they needed to come up with ways of getting people to spend all that free experience, and it couldn't just be something as simple as increasing the cost of the free XP ships, which is why, like, the Missouri was 750,000, and then the Musashi was 1 million, I think, and that was one. But that's why they came up with a research bureau. And yet they still continue, whenever they introduce a new line of ships, they're giving people the tier 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8, potentially for free. And I've never understood the logic behind that. But that's what they're continuing to do. Missions and drops for new ship lines as they're introduced. So, yeah, it's something that I've never understood. It seems to fly in the face of one of the big problems that the game has, getting people to spend their XP on something other than just introducing a new line of ships every 3 months. But hey, whatever. Distribution methods for new ships. There's a link on the dev block there to more news on that. Then they go to what lies ahead for us. And they mentioned something here that I was very disappointed to not see, which was the second bullet point, working on aircraft carriers. Oof, yeah, okay. We carry out regular tests to check different hypotheses and ideas, including those related to the mechanics of ship detection by planes. Do you remember them bringing that one up?
Yes.
Saying that, like the radio range for tanks and scouts in World of Tanks, where the scout could go and spot an enemy, but if the scout didn't have a radio with enough range and you were outside of the radio range of the scout tank, you wouldn't see the enemy on the map. You wouldn't see them to shoot at them. Or you would see them on the map, but you wouldn't see them to shoot at them. And they were talking about doing something like that for carriers, because the biggest problem, well, it's not the biggest problem, but one big problem with aircraft carriers is they can scout the entire enemy team within 30 seconds of the start of a match, and there's nothing you can do about it. And if you're in a destroyer, that's really bad news. So what if the scout aircraft didn't have the radio range to signal back to the rest of the ships in the fleet? Then, okay, you're spotted by an aircraft, but nobody else is far enough away. Everybody else is too far away to see you, so fine, no problem. Sounded like a great idea. That one's kind of disappeared into the fog of battle. They talk about it here.
They said that they were going to test this internally and that it needed a lot of testing, and then they'd come back later with data. But the thing about aircraft spotting is that I think aircraft carriers have just, I don't know, a big lobbying group inside Wargaming that pressures Wargaming into not doing anything about it. Because honestly, that's the one part that I understand the least about spotting. Because I don't think most people play aircraft carriers for spotting, right? Wargaming has the population numbers that they want to achieve. But most carriers spot by accident, not bad.
Yes, it's more through luck than judgment. It's I'm going for that target there, and you just happen to spot the other ships around them. You're not trying to spot the other ships around them. Unless your carrier's already been sunk and you've only got 3 aircraft left in the squadron, and you are capable of thinking and breathing at the same time, which admittedly cuts out most of the aircraft carrier player base. But those 3% who actually can think and breathe at the same time, I'm going to upset a lot of people in the comments of this one. Don't try to attack.
Let's be fair here. It probably cuts out most of the World of Warships player base.
True. But, the intelligent player won't just throw those aircraft away. They'll keep them outside of anti-aircraft range, and they will scout for the team as long as they possibly can with the 3 or 4 aircraft they have remaining. Other than that, yeah, most spotting. I mean, you might go over a cap circle on your way if it's not going to take you too far out of your way in order to torpedo the big dumb battleship. But generally speaking, carrier players don't play to spot. They just spot by virtue of the fact that they're in the most overpowered and broken class in the game.
Yeah, and that's why I don't understand why they don't nerf spotting, because honestly, like, if they touch the damage or the anti-air or the plane recharger, so then they lose aircraft players, right? And they don't want it. They want to keep the population number. But I really think addressing spotting would only affect like the top % of the aircraft players that actually understand spotting.
The Super Unicum aircraft carrier players, it would only affect them. The majority wouldn't even notice that the change had been implemented.
Yeah, so it would be such an easy way of bringing aircraft carriers more in line with game balance, with not upsetting their population. Yeah. And yet they still don't do it. And it's so obvious that they oppose to it because, I mean, you remember they told us they can't implement minimap spotting only because it would confuse people. They said they tested this internally and it didn't work. It's like every time we brought it up, it's like, guys, we've tested it internally. It didn't work. It's too confusing.
Yeah, I don't believe them.
Obviously,
we've tested it internally and it didn't work is their way of saying people might actually like this if we put it onto the test server and let players have a go at it. So we'll just have to tell them we tested it internally and it didn't work. It's the standard cop-out.
And it's the same like Cyclone. So the concept is in the game, but it's not too confusing with Cyclone, but it's too confusing with carriers. And now the latest, then they came up with the idea to make anti-aircraft AA more useless and make carriers stronger in order to address spotting. That the people didn't like, so they dropped it again. And then they came up with the even more confusing idea of limited range spotting, which is even more confusing than minimap spotting only, which they're now testing internally. So it's pretty clear that they have no intention of solving the problem, because the obvious solution, they're just not going for it.
You have to wonder, though. I mean, if they're saying, no, it's too confusing for players, let's not forget that they are talking about players for whom they thought having to tell the difference between an aircraft and a ship consumable was too complicated, so they just automated the ship consumables. I've said this on multiple occasions. I am not making this up. I've heard this straight from the mouths of the developers themselves, actually in person. They think that aircraft carrier players are too stupid to be able to manage their own ship's consumables.
Well...
Who knows? Maybe they are telling the truth. Maybe it is too complicated.
Yeah, but then they but their newest idea is even a more complicated version, right? Because it's minimap spotting only for if you're too far away and you only can see it at a certain range, and they have cyclones in it.
But then they can say we tested it internally and it was too complicated.
I'm just waiting for that post in a few months.
Yeah.
By the way, ship distribution that you touched earlier, what we forgot to mention is that they obviously, since they've gone away from, since they've implemented drop rates of random mechanics and such, they have come up with the new genius idea of auctioning off ships, and currently they are auctioning off a Gremiachi.
Yes! Yeah. This is the nicest one.
And the most humorous note I find is that they state that the battle balance and situation combat will remain almost the same since the lots are not numerous. So basically, Wargaming's idea of balancing is if not too many people have a ship, it by definition is balanced.
It was a pre-order ship, wasn't it? Gremiachi and Yubari.
Sims, I think.
Yeah, Yubari.
Cargo. I can't remember where Yubari came in.
Yeah, Yubari, Sims, and Gremiachi was a 3-ship pre-order package.
Yes.
Atago replaced Kitakazi. Kitakami, yeah. But yeah, I mean, that's why hardly anybody has them. They haven't been on sale for 6 years. So, what? Balance? Because they're rare? Yeah, well, they're rare because you have created artificial scarcity.
Yeah, it doesn't. I mean, in the case of the Gremmy, to be fair, it's not like it's grossly overpowered for Tier 5 or anything. It's a very competent Tier 5 destroyer.
It used to be back in pre-order when there were only Japanese and American destroyers in the game. It was
busy fire back in those days. It was
Gremmy was a fairly overpowered ship, but it's been a long time since the Gremmy Ashi was put into the game. It was prior to the game going out. It was a closed beta ship.
There's not many of them, so they're fine.
Yeah, it's still a good ship, but it is by no means as good as it was in the couple of days before the game went live. There have been a lot of water under the bridge since then, all kinds of other ships that make the Gremmy Ashi just look it's still fairly good.
Spend less than that on, because the minimum bid was like 10,000 gold, and you could spend less than that on something like Leningrad, or like there's plenty of other premium ships that are just as good, if not better.
Yeah,
entirely playing on the rarity of it, so it's pretty overpriced.
Yeah, I mean, I actually played the Gremmy Ashi fairly recently because I thought, oh yeah, the Gremmy Ashi, that's been around donkey's years. I wonder what it's like. Tier 5, not too bad. Yeah, it's not as good as it used to be.
True,
either that or I'm not.
They are trying to cash in on their reputation in this case.
Yeah, they're doing a Type 59 on it, aren't they?
Yeah.
Because the Type 59 isn't the tank that it used to be either. Because the game's moved on.
The alien head, the M4 or the M6, whatever.
The M6A1.
Yeah,
M6A1E3 or something like that.
That was the World Attacks pre-order that caused a big ruckus when they put
that
on sale.
That's because they promised that you would never be able to get it other than in the pre-order, and then like 10 years later they said, yeah, we're putting this on sale. Oh, really? Said everybody who already owned one. And then they went ahead and did it anyway.
Pretty much.
At the end of the day, with wargaming, you always have to ask the question, where's the money? And that, follow the money, and that will lead you to the answer to any question that you might have. Whether it's going to cost too much money to fix it, or whether they'll make too much money by putting it in, or not make too much money by not putting it in. That's always the answer to your question, which is perfectly fair. They're a business at the end of the day. They're not a charity. But it's when they try to make it sound like they're doing things for other reasons. Sorry. Not buying it, sorry.
I mean, they aren't directly selling it. They're putting up for a blind auction where you have to guess how much you want to bid and hope that you are in the winning bids. So it's not
which encourages people to post ridiculous amounts.
Yes.
If it was a proper auction, it might still go for a ridiculous amount. But if you don't know how much you might be getting outbid by, then you bet the farm, don't you?
Yeah, I mean, it's whale hunting. It is.
Yes.
It's definitely whale hunting. They're going for the whales that have lots of gold or lots of money they're willing to spend, poor impulse control, and a desire to have a rare ship that they don't necessarily have already.
Yes, that's exactly what it is. And like they say, 80% of the income comes from 20% of the players. So, where are we? Oh, Huron? They're putting the Huron in.
Appears to be a replacement for Haida, which is one you can't buy anymore, I believe.
Until the next time you can.
I mean, Haida is by far like the stealthiest Tier 7 destroyer, so it's
Haida is amazing.
It's a little bit less good than a Cossack, but not for a Tier 7, it's pretty strong. So
but the Cossack's Tier 8, so yeah.
It's basically Cossack with one less turret.
Yeah. The Haida's amazing. So yeah, no longer on sale, of course, until the next time they put it on sale. Once they've drummed up enough hype. Huron. I'm sure it'll be a perfectly fine ship. It's just a shame that, I mean, this is the ship that should have been put into the game in place of. I'm struggling to remember the name there. Yukon.
Yeah, it's just the one I think that they pushed for another destroyer, and Wargaming was like, nope, it's a battleship.
Yeah,
doing a battleship.
A Canadian battleship?
Yep.
What does that look like? Yeah. So Huron. It only cost them most of their biggest community contributors, but eventually, 6 months later, the Huron is going to come into the game, and hopefully they won't screw it up. No stats, just they say we're ready to share information about the status, i.e. they've done the 3D model, but that's it.
I mean, looking at it, it's the same gun layout as Haida, and it's still got that single quarter torpedo launcher, so
Yeah.
it looks like it'll have the same firepower, but I imagine it'll have rather worse stealth.
Stealth, yeah. It'll be hider, but not quite as good in one way or another. Maybe a slower reload, worse stealth, slightly slower, whatever. It'll still probably be a pretty good ship.
I imagine so, yeah.
It'd better be. They've pissed off Canada more than enough.
Yeah, you
They don't want to screw this up.
beating down your door.
Yeah. Oh, God, yeah. Next point. Very soon we'll share the latest results of the balance changes for Zao, Petropavlovsk, and the FDR. So they did buff the Zao, didn't they? Give it like 2,000 more hit points?
Yes. And then
they never admitted.
again.
Yeah, because they never admitted that the Zao needed changes. They said it was as a gesture of goodwill to everybody saying buff the Zao, which people have been saying for years. I mean, the Zao isn't a bad ship, but it kind of has been power crept a little. It's still pretty good at what it does, but it's got a very limited field of what it is good at. It can't do everything well, like Petropavlovsk, which is also on the list, and FDR, which is just, I mean, in a wow. Do you remember when they introduced that thing?
Yeah, I think a lot of people are still, I mean, myself included, still wonder why it was put in the game in the first place.
Oh,
well.
But yeah, balance changes. So it's been 6 months, and they still haven't done it. They still are talking about doing it, rather than actually doing it. I mean, how long does it take? How much internal testing? But whatever. They are at least still communicating about it. They're letting us know that they haven't forgotten. And everybody complained that we haven't seen a new map in 2 years. Turns out it takes a year to make a new map, which is amusing because when I went to the Community Contributors Summit, they produced a new map in 24 hours, which we designed for them. And yeah, obviously it was a bit rough around the edges, but it didn't take no year to get a new map into the game. So hopefully we're going to see some new mechanics and new features on this map, which would explain why it's taken them an entire fucking year to put a new map into the game after promising they would. So it's based on the Faroe Islands. They reckon we're going to have it by the summer, so maybe in 4 months. It does look pretty nice. And I have to say, I am loving the look of those icebergs. I don't know if you've seen the screenshots. I don't know if when you come to actually edit this, you can put the screenshots up. But it does look nice. And that is about it. No mention whatsoever about one of the other things that they promised us 6 months ago. Putting back all of the operations that they took out of the game because, aircraft carriers, so none of these operations work anymore.
Yeah. We've not heard, I think, literally anything since then about...
Nope, not a thing. They promised they would put them back in. They promised a new operation, and they have done fuck all. If they had done anything, they would have been talking about it in this dev blog post, because they're talking about everything else that it's taken them 6 months to do and they haven't done yet. Not a word about operations. You still can't complete any missions in operations. There's still only a bare selection of operations to choose from. None of them higher than tier 7. It's like they just... Well, I mean, we can't let them forget. Wargaming. We remember you said you'd do this. Do it. We're not letting you get away with it.
I mean, I mean, I'm not having much hopes. Maybe once they've finally considered how to implement submarines or something, I think that's still pretty much a submarines all on deck thing.
Yeah.
But
it wouldn't surprise me. Yeah. Wouldn't surprise me because they said that we're going to put a new op in. Or did they? I'm pretty sure they said that, but I'm not 100% sure. But a submarine operation, because that's what submarines are basically almost pretty much made for.
That's how they were introduced with that Halloween event that was...
Exactly.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Shall we move on to another blog post, or is there anything else you want to say about that one?
I just want to mention when I said they will share the latest results of balance changes for Sao Petro and Roosevelt. Like, those balance changes are about half a year old. And they nerfed the reload of Petro for half a second. It's not like it was a proper, like, it's just that so many people complained about this ship because it's brokenly overpowered that after, years, they said, okay, we will nerf it, but, we do like small incremental changes, but we do them repeatedly. So, it's just a small change, like half a second. And there was nothing like half a year. And it's like after half a year, they are like, we will share the latest results of changes. I can tell you the result. Nothing has changed.
Small changes made very, very slowly.
Yeah, once every 6 months, we'll do a small change. It's like when everybody's complaining about the Kremlin being too tanky, and they said, we've heard your concerns, and we're going to nerf its anti-aircraft, medium-range anti-aircraft aura slightly, because it's too tanky. I'll shut them up. Really? Yeah. Anyway.
Also, apparently they mentioned during an official stream that second half of the year there will be something with operations. So, so basically in an undisclosed future, that's probably going to be delayed again.
18 months after they said that they were going to do it, they're planning to announce what it is that they haven't actually done yet. Or are they just hoping that we'll have all forgotten it by then?
Maybe.
Yeah. But the sad thing is, they're probably right. Most people will have forgotten it because they've managed to drive the popularity of because every time we said, I mean, you guys remember, and I'm probably breaking an NDA, but fuck it. Every time we raised the question of operations, they always came back with the same answer. People don't like operations. It's not a popular game mode. Nobody wants to play it. Yeah, because of you fuckers. You keep taking them out. You remove you used to be able to complete missions in operations. Not anymore. So the rewards you can only earn once, and you can't even complete missions in them. And there's only 5 operations to choose from. There used to be 10. And you've pulled half of them out. Nobody's playing them because of you fuckers. You're deliberately driving the popularity into the ground so that you can say nobody plays operations and it's not worth supporting them.
It was only last year that they even got around to finally resetting the rewards.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that came out as a result of Little White Mouse Gate. That was in the last 6 months.
Yeah.
But they only did it once. I don't know.
If there is a big enough fuck up, should I reset it again?
Throw us another bone. The next time they screw everything up, they'll throw us another little bone and say, yeah, we're resetting the reward progress and operations again. There you go. Now shut up. So, what's next?
They announced
cruisers, and we were speculating last week that if we've got heavy cruisers going up to tier 10, so it'll surely be a line of French light cruisers that are a side branch. No,
it's variations on the Dunkirk that are now apparently cruisers. They even say similar to the Dunkirk class fast battleship. Really? Really? Yeah. So, yeah, we've got the Cherbourg, a tier 7 super heavy cruiser. Main battery consisting of 8 305mm guns. So it's a tier 8 Dunkirk in the same way that the Strasbourg is a tier 7 Dunkirk.
I think it's actually smaller caliber Dunkirk's got the 330s, which you see at tier 9.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah, they're even smaller caliber guns.
Yeah, those are like 11-inch, 12-inch. Can't remember what 305 is.
Yeah. And then you've got the Brest at tier 9, which has the Dunkirk's guns, 330mm guns. They probably have higher penetration than the Dunkirk and probably better accuracy because it's tier 9. So
we would hope
they better be better than the Dunkirk's guns, but it's basically a tier 9 Dunkirk. And then you've got the Marseille at tier 10. 9 330mm guns, although the turrets are arranged in the same way as the Izumo, so realistically, most of the time, unless you want to give an awful lot of big, flat, high-sided broadside to shoot at, you'll only be using 6 of them, so you're a tier 10 Dunkirk. Also 330mm guns. Technically 1 extra turret, but unless you want to get Citadel, you are not going to be exposing that turret to fire. So, let's see. They're going to be fast. Although it does say thanks to the traditionally French improved engine boost. So generally the engine boost gives you an 8% speed buff, but the French one gives you 20%. Is that correct?
Can't remember the numbers offhand.
Yeah, I know the 8%. I'm not sure about the 20%, but it's a very good engine boost. And bust.
Chat
I was
will
trying to
tell
say
us.
boof. I tried to say buff and boost at the same time. Anyway, but I'm a bit worried of whether or not the speed depends on having the engine boost running. But they've done something like that with the two British battle cruisers, the Incomparable and the Repulse. They give it a, if you take the right captain skill and fit the right module, you can have the engine boost and the ship running at nearly 40 knots for anything up to 4 minutes. So it does work, but it's, relying on crutches and gimmicks in order to sell something, like they did with the Dutch cruisers, which are utter garbage, and they're trying to balance around the airstrikes.
We do have some stats. We can see that the Cherbourg, 31.9 knots.
It's not slow. Okay.
The rest 31.5, and Marseille is, where is it hiding? Marseille is something.
What I find interesting is that the tier 8 has the worst concealment, and the concealment gets better as you go high up the tiers
33.
for some reason.
Oh, lordy. 25mm plating on the Cherbourg. Oof.
Yeah, it's weird because it notes that they're going to have increased accuracy on their secondaries, 139mm, so they'll have good pen.
Okay. Decent secondary. Here's the thing: decent secondaries, and yes, the French 139mm are decent guns. If they give them improved accuracy and extended range, fantastic. But every single one of these ships has 25mm plating.
Yeah, they look like they're going to be fairly squashy, so it's going to be a slightly weird combination. But we've had some lines with weird combinations. I mean, the Italian being tested right now, the destroyers have quite a weird combination, and they've already buffed the cripplingly small main battery range on those several times by this point.
I've just noticed something else: 25mm plating, so they're going to eat citadels from 16-inch armor piercing or higher. In fact, 25mm, can 15-inch AP overmatch that? 25. I'm not sure. Definitely 16-inch, and we're talking tier 8, 9, and 10 ships here. So there's going to be no shortage of 16-inch guns shooting at them. Also 25mm plating, so pretty much nobody other than destroyers are going to need IFHE to get through the deck armor, and the fires last 60 seconds.
Yeah.
So they're going to eat huge high explosive chunk damage and burn forever. But at least they're fast if you're running an engine boost.
It must always be stressed when we look at things like these, that these are very preliminary stats, but having said that, they rarely completely change their initial idea of what a line is going to be about.
Yeah, you can see what they're aiming at by looking at these stats, even if the stats change a little bit here or there. I mean, just something as simple as giving them 27mm of plating, so for God's sake, at least they're got the same plating as other cruisers at the same tier, or some other cruisers at the same tier. Because let's face, they're not cruisers.
No.
They're tier 7, 8, 9, and 10. Oh, sorry, tier 8, 9, and 10 Dunkirks in pretty much every way that matters, as well as the armor.
They're almost kind of following on with the battle cruiser theme that we've been on lately.
Yeah, that's basically what they are. First, we had the Azuma and the Shino and the Alaska and Puerto Rico, and then all of the German battle cruisers, and now basically we're getting French battle cruisers. That's basically what it is. I'm not necessarily a bad thing. Just don't go around under the misconception that these things are actually battleships, because they're not.
I've talked about it a while ago, but maybe it would be an idea to not call these cruisers in game. These large, kind of intermediate between large cruisers.
Call them what they are. They're battle cruisers.
Well, kind of.
That's what they are.
But yeah, to have them be a separate category for matchmaking purposes, and so people also, psychological element of people are not thinking of these as cruisers necessarily.
Yeah, they'll never do that. The amount of different, they'll never do it, because if they did that, they would have to expand team sizes beyond 12 in order to give everybody a chance of getting into the same battle. And the cruiser category is so bloated at the moment. You've got cruisers that are basically big destroyers like the Alaska and the Austin. You've got light cruisers, who are these days only played by the extremely brave and the Sailing Robin. Then you've got the heavy cruisers, and the super cruisers, and that's 4 different distinct styles of ship in one category. I mean, they're so bloated. They really do need to start making distinctions between light cruisers, heavy cruisers, battle cruisers. But if they did that, they would have to expand the team size, and the servers can't handle it. I brought this up when they were talking about introducing submarines. Because worst case scenario, right, with 12 players per team, 2 carriers. How many submarines was the limit?
Was it 2 or 3? I think it was 2.
Let's say 2. So 2 carriers, 2 submarines. Anything up to 4 destroyers, and that leaves battleships and cruisers. So let's say 2 battleships. That leaves 2 slots for cruisers. Super cruiser, heavy cruiser, light cruiser, radar cruiser, small AA cruiser, Austin, Atlanta, which basically means that leaves you 4 ships on the team, potentially, the 2 battleships and the 2 cruisers, that are going to be visible. Because 4 are destroyers, 2 are submarines, and 2 are aircraft carriers. So those 4 players that aren't in the submarines, destroyers, or aircraft carriers, most of the time, at best, are only going to see another 4 enemy ships to shoot at. You introduce all of these new classes, you keep the team size at 12, this problem starts arising. And with the proliferation of all these different types of cruisers, the battle cruisers, the heavy cruisers, the light cruisers, the small gunboat style AA destroyer type cruisers, I mean, all of that in one class, where you might only get 2 or 3 of them on the team. It's like one team has 3 cruisers, the other team has 3 cruisers. Yeah, but this team has 3 Petropavlovsks.
Yeah.
This team has a Minotaur and 2 Austins.
It's okay. Soon they'll show you data that Petro is balanced.
Yeah.
We also do have the on the same page the first announced super cruiser, whatever you want to call it, at tier 7, the Toulon.
Yeah.
Which was just, they actually note that it was a project for a battleship with a displacement of 17,500 tons, which
that's not a battleship.
No. So it's one of those things where the terminology used collides with the reality.
That's a pre-dreadnought.
Pretty much. So yeah, it's going to be the 305 mils, and it looks like, are they twin turrets? It's hard to tell. Or is it quad turrets? Hang on, let's actually look at the
It's 2x4.
Okay,
Yeah,
so it's 8 guns facing
It's 2
forward.
quad turrets, yeah. Look at the size of the forward deck.
I mean, it's
Actually,
like they were so impressed with the incomparable that they couldn't help themselves make more weird stuff like this.
I think this is going to be one of those things that came up in, like, the Germany came out with the Deutschlands and the French panicked and went,
Yeah, the
design
French,
something with bigger guns.
yeah, the French did a lot of that, a lot of reactive ship design.
Yeah.
The Germans are doing this, the British are doing this. Quick, design something to counter it. And then it arrived a generation late. So, main battery reload booster, fairly standard. Repair party. Okay, so it's tier 7 cruiser with a repair party. Hydro or defensive AA, so no-brainer. Hydro. And a catapult fighter.
And 16 millimeters of plating.
Oh, yes. Really? Where's that?
On the top, 60 millimeters plating.
That's a battleship, is it?
Fly duration 60 seconds also.
But it has 11.5 base concealment. Now, you can't mount the module at this tier, but with the captain's skill and the camo, you should go to about 10. So
base
you've got
or less. Yeah.
And the range isn't too shabby either. 16.8 kilometers that's respectable for tier 7.
Yeah. Yeah, you look at some of the British heavy cruisers and they struggle to send shots out further than 13.5 kilometers. That's actually not bad. But that's 16 millimeters of plating. Oh, lordy, that's Minotaur levels of protection. Oh, you're going to get chewed up by destroyers. What are the secondaries like? Crap.
I mean, speaking of secondaries, by the way, I mean, those are all cruisers, which means you can't take secondary skills. So when they say they have increased the accuracy of the secondaries for like regular
point,
ones. And the other part
most
is...
you can mount the module rather than take any captain skills.
Yeah, and the other part is that the Dunkirks have the secondaries at the back and the guns at the front, which means you only use your secondaries really if you're running away and somebody is actually close enough while you're running away.
Yeah. Yeah, and they all seem to be the same. Although the Brest does have a couple of secondaries mounted on the wings, midships, as does the Cherbourg. But the majority secondaries are all rearward facing, just like the Dunkirk. So,
It isn't going to be a line of Napolis by any stretch of the imagination.
No. But at least they're better than the Dutch cruisers. Honestly, I mean, I was actually looking forward to them. Because we're looking at ships that actually took part in World War II battles. Battle of the Java Sea, the De Ruyter, oh no.
Funnily enough, the ones at the lower tiers, the more historical ones, are actually better than the higher tier ones, where they've gimped them with the
awful AP. Just the armor piercing ammo on those things is so anemic, and it's like every time they announce a change to these Dutch cruisers, there's always a change to the airstrike consumable. For God's sake, stop balancing a ship around its consumables. Make it a good ship, and people will play it. It doesn't have to be overpowered; it just has to not be shit.
Hell, I mean, literally, you could have, and this probably, if I was designing this line, I probably would have done it this way: is balance it around the guns as you would any other gun-based cruiser line, and just make the airdrops a limited consumable. So you have to only get a certain number of uses per.
Yeah. I mean, it's nice. It adds something different that Dutch cruisers have that nobody else has. But it shouldn't be the defining feature. You have to give us something that we can actually play with. I mean, I don't know if did you see when Flammy was trying to get more than 100,000 damage done in the Johan de Witt, and he failed in 6 hours. And Flammy's not a bad player, right? He just failed. The ships are so... Well, they're not... Are they? I was going to say they're not terrible, but I think they might be. It's not very good.
They are. The whole line is just below average, consistently below average. There's no high spot, really.
Yeah, they're not terrible. I'm sorry, the Netherlands. Your ships aren't terrible. They just kind of suck a bit. In the game.
Only one that's somewhat fun to play is the De Zeven Provincienne, and no surprises there. That's the premium, so they have to at least make it somewhat playable.
Oh, I find that trash compared to the tech. It's a verse of the tech tree.
I mean,
it's out of trash.
I honestly prefer it. I didn't like the Harlem at all, but if you offered me the choice between that and, the Kutuzov, for instance, which still holds up reasonably well, there's no real,
The problem is... Yeah, the Kutuzov is great. The problem with the Da Vincian is they removed, I think, the useful hydro consumable and replaced it with a useless engine boost. They think they've given it the light caliber guns, so you need to spec additionally into IFAG or something. You still don't have an actual good DPM. The airstrike is harder to use. It's like they've just taken the regular tier 8, made it worse in every conceivable way.
Mm-hmm. Sorry, I'm just looking at the next one.
But, it looks fantastic, though. That's the most important thing. It's a good-looking ship.
Do you remember how everybody lost their minds when there was I can't remember what it was, something parked behind an island, like stationary, the absolute best case scenario for getting something with the Dutch airstrike, and 3 golden lions, I think, all targeted this guy at the same time, and his health bar just disappeared. And everybody lost their minds and said, "Oh my God, these are the most overpowered things ever! Holy shit!" They met the Petropavlovsk look fine and balanced, not taking into consideration the fact that it was like a laboratory condition set up for maximum effective use of this airstrike. And they went and nerfed the airstrike, which was the only good thing about the ship, based purely on a result of the hype from that one YouTube clip that was going around.
Yeah,
Yes,
I mean, it's also that, like, the bombs obviously can't penetrate everyone, so against some ships, even if you get a perfect drop, you don't do damage. The thing is, the airstrikes are also kind of balanced around fire chance. The only consistent things that airstrikes do are fires, so you need to hit them and staggered and just get fires going, but you need to obviously close enough to get them, and the game isn't really friendly to a cruiser that wants to be close personally.
Yeah, under the ideal circumstances, you hit him with high explosives, set one fire, he would burn his damage control, and then you hit him with the airstrike and set two fires. But how often is that going to happen? Because first you have to hit him with the airstrike. And for that, they basically have to be not moving.
I mean, ideally, you hit him with one airstrike that sets like two fires, he damage consume, and hit him with the second airstrike that does two fires, but that requires you hitting two airstrikes.
Yeah, good luck with that. So anyway, that was French cruisers. I don't know how we got onto Dutch cruisers. Probably my fault.
Staying on topic is not something we do particularly well on this podcast, so it's fine. You're in good company.
Okay. So what's next? The Sevastopol, Dido, Canarias. Are we looking at that one?
We tend to generally gloss
we skipped the Rogue Wave thing.
There was that whole Rogue Wave, early access to Italian destroyers, and other. Yeah, let's look at that one.
Okay, so Rogue Wave is the game event that they're bringing back.
Yeah, it's the post-apocalyptic battles, the basically battle royale thing with 4 teams of 3 fighting it around. It was actually pretty fun, I think. It was made a bit less fun due to the insane Benham grind. Yeah,
the Benham was like a really good ship, but the way they did the grind for that was definitely not particularly friendly to anybody. It was it was put together in rather an anti-player way, and then of course they upped the ante later on by making the Puerto Rico even worse.
Well, the major points in this dev blog post are Rogue Wave's coming back, which is a fun game mode. You know, it's not something that you take too seriously. It's fun, it's entertaining, it's done pretty well. Early access to Italian destroyers. They have a couple of, basically you're going to grind for tokens, which the usual way, nothing new. No stats about the Italian destroyers, although a couple of pictures with some
of the camos look all right. I'm not sure about that Tuscany one, but the FR25 perma camo looks rather nice.
Yeah, they're not terrible. Taranto port, okay, and then basically we're just looking at a whole bunch of St. Patrick's Day stuff. So camos for the Belfast.
That green is, I don't know, there's something about that that's just...
I think it's the gold turrets next to the green that just make your eyes bleed.
That's eye-watering.
Seriously, if anybody from Ireland is watching this, do you not get sick of all of the St. Patrick's Day shit with the leprechauns and the 4-leaf clover and everything being green? Do you not get sick of all of that shit? Because I'm not Irish and I do. But anyway.
Some people vigorously nodding that are watching or listening to this right now.
And then more cosmetic enhancements, skins for the Ragnar, updated weather effects, visual effects.
I did watch some of those clips. Some of them, like the Ragnar, again, that's one I do like. There's a bit of a mixed bag with some of these camos, but yeah, the Ragnar one does look nice. But
it does look very Viking-y, doesn't it?
Yeah. The updated visual effects, the lightning looks all right. I honestly can't tell that much difference with the snowstorm, but then we have some updating shooting effects and things like splashes and stuff, which do look pretty good.
Yeah. And then I can't help but feel a little bit confused because there's updated visual effects for aircraft carriers as well. And things like aircraft on deck exploding, but I'm not sure what it is about it. There's just something wrong. Oh, wait, the carrier's on fire. That's it.
Yeah, that's not realistic at all.
Yeah. Don't remember that ever happening.
Carriers don't catch on fire in real life. That's ridiculous.
I mean, speaking of exploding, that's something carriers can't actually do as the only class in the game.
Don't get me started. And that's basically it for that dev blog post. There wasn't an awful lot of content in there. It's mostly cosmetic stuff. Once again, art department carrying the shit out of World of Warships.
Oh, yes.
Next. Changes?
The test ship changes. I don't think there's anything particularly substantial here apart from...
Pussycat! Hi, Sam.
Yeah, it's Sam. The Atlantico is getting some interesting changes so that they've made it more... the secondaries aren't overly strong against destroyers, but they will be still very effective against battleships and cruisers. So I think that's quite an interesting concept. It's not a universal, these are good secondaries. It's these are good secondaries against certain targets, which is
I have to admit,
an interesting change. No hydro though. We're moving the hydro, so I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I haven't really been paying that much attention to the test ships. So most of what's going on in this blog post, this is the first time I've seen it. There's various nerfs, not nerfs, more balance changes, like the one you just described. Giving destroyers an easier time because the shell's velocity is slower, but yeah, so on and so on.
The one thing that is a bit different is under the section with the DDO and the Canarius is they actually note, and again, communication is a good thing. We've had your concerns about the several changes that we've already applied to the ship, so we'd like to take a moment to explain this trend in more detail and basically go on to say that yes, they've had dev blogs with lots of these small nerfs happening to these ships, and obviously people in the community have gone, oh no, they're going to come out and be terrible, but they kind of explicitly state that they are making these changes downwards because they've been consistently much too strong in testing. So it's one of those things where it's good for them to point this stuff out, because on the face of it, if you just see these blogs where it's consistently it's lost X amount of reload and it's getting its smoke time nerfed and etc., it's like you might think you're inevitably going to come to negative conclusions about that. So it's good to see that extra bit of
I do have to give them credit in this respect, because normally, one of the reasons why I used to barely ever pay any attention to the dev blog post was 6 months ago. If this dev blog post had come out 6 months ago, it would have said Tier 6 Dido, short burst smoke generator consumable, smoke dispersion time 40 seconds to 35 seconds, reload time 70 seconds to 80 seconds, and that would have been it. They wouldn't have expanded on it. There would have been no explanation. It would have just been the facts and nothing but the facts. And now you've got 3 lines of changes to the Dido and 3 paragraphs of explanations for the changes. So I do have to give them credit for that. You're not just...
It's good to see context for these changes. I mean, the same with the Atlantico, Sevastopol. They even do it with the Italian destroyers. They're sort of breaking down what the flavour of the various bits of the line is supposed to be.
Mm-hmm.
Although I have to say, if they allowed contributors to show off those ships, people would have actually context about how they perform.
Well, they're still not allowing that.
Of course not.
No, pretty much still NDA until they're released, I think, or just before release.
Yeah, when it's too late to influence anybody. Yeah.
Yes, that's definitely the downside of that. Actually, that also I think I was going to say earlier on as well, that was in the French article, and I think I've seen elsewhere, is that they're now also particularly giving reasoning for the naming of the ships that they're using. And we'll come on to that with the last article we have with the new ships. But that's also something that's previously been really opaque, and that we just get, this is the such and such, and sometimes it seems like a weird name, and occasionally communities even manage to get names changed, like France becoming Republique, for example. I even saw a post about the Atlantico saying, well, actually, that's not really a great name for a hypothetical Brazilian battleship, but we'll see if that actually...
I just noticed something buried right at the bottom of that page. This
United States, yes.
Yeah. This does kind of remind me a little of what was happening with submarines before they eventually, said, right, okay, we're taking them back to the drawing board. Small incremental changes.
Yeah. Well, I mean, testing changes are usually bigger, but still, that's not incremental by anybody's.
So, if anybody doesn't know what we're talking about, American supercarrier, United States, detectability range by air from 22.54 kilometers to 15.53 kilometers. They have cut the visibility by a quarter. Wow.
But that brings me back to what we discussed last week with C-Raptor, where he said when he saw the super carriers that they're probably gonna bring carrier sniping back, like one carrier sniping another. So I guess that's probably why they are now less detectable by air.
Yeah, but that's a good thing, because if they're fucking each other's shit up, they're not fucking my shit up, are they?
I can only agree, unless your carrier loses, in which case...
Tell us how you really feel, Jingles.
I'm going to catch so much hell in the comments for this video.
No. Usually I just trash talk carriers every time we come up with them, so it's fine.
Okay.
By the way, since you've said, Jingles, you didn't pay much attention to test ships, did you pay any attention to Atlantico so far?
No, not at all.
It's got 9.2-inch secondary guns.
At tier 8.
It's got the Drake and Goliath guns as secondary guns. You can see why they maybe want it to be less effective against destroyers, because those just accurately firing 9.2-inch HE shells at destroyers, that's going to mess up anybody's day.
Yeah. Oh. Interesting.
Yeah, it's a weird, it's a bonkers concept, and apparently it is more. We had Drac on to talk about it at one point, and his guesswork as to the origin was more or less bang on, because there was later on a developer comment or a community manager comment which pretty much said what he said. That there was it was one particular admiral, I think, was kind of advocating for these kind of designs, and there was some preliminary work done before people realized quite how bonkers it was.
There's a bit of the Admiral Beatty about it then, isn't there?
Yeah, so it was one particular Brazilian admiral that was like, yeah, let's just, why not, big guns, let's go back to the old days of big mixed broadsides, because that worked so well.
Intermediate, there's a reason why we went to all big gun battleships 40 years ago.
But it was very much in the context of the South American naval arms race. So, yeah, anyone interested in that, go and listen to the last, I think it was the last one we had with Drac. Those are always good discussions.
True.
So, anyone that missed that one, you can go and listen to that and get more detail about it than I can adequately remember right now.
But yeah, Atlantico is one of the test ships that I'm actually interested. I mean, it's going to be the next dockyard.
Yes, dockyard ship.
I hope it will be somewhat playable.
So I'll never get it then. Dockyard ship.
Wait, are you saying you don't want to spend like 40,000 doubloons or so?
As long as you put, if you're willing to put the time in, but that's it. You have to stomach putting the time in, kind of thing.
Yeah, and I'm not willing to put the time in. Never mind. No, I'm sure that they, everyone's going to say, but I'm sure they'll put it on sale again, like a couple of months afterwards. But yeah, well, I'm not spending actual money on it either. So yeah, it's not a ship I'm ever going to have. Looks fun though. I guess this takes us to the final, and this one actually came out today.
Yes.
Just like an hour before we started recording.
Some announced new ships. There was actually, I think they were. I saw this on Reddit yesterday. I don't know if this has come out because they planned to put this out, or if they accidentally leaked the pictures on stream and thought we'd better put out the blog post. So,
probably the latter.
Yeah. But here we are. We know what the ships are called, and we have some preliminary stats for them as well.
Yeah. Actual stats? Oh, yeah, we do have stats, yeah.
Yes.
Rather than just descriptions. So this, by the way, if you haven't already seen this post, this is Wargaming just making shit up, basically. Not that there's anything wrong with that, although I know that is going to be a problem for quite a few people, so I thought I'd just get this out there right at the beginning. None of these things existed. Some of them might have been blueprints.
Yeah, one of them definitely is. The Japanese ship is one of the, or at least based on one of the preliminary Yamato designs. It's one of the A140 designs.
Yes, it's a Yamato with less and lower caliber guns. They're only 410s.
Yes.
And it's only got 8 of them.
But yeah, it is fairly limited in firepower for its tier. But yeah, then we have the Edgar, which is an evolution of the Minotaur class ships, which already didn't really exist, and then Mecklenburg, which is just
yeah, it's a tier 10 Scharnhorst.
Yes, with 16 guns. We had Marlborough with 16 guns, and now we have a German ship with 16 battleship caliber guns as well. Only this one's going to be tier 10 and smaller caliber.
Yeah, not even 356mm guns. These are only 305s, but it does have 16 of them.
And they say it has good accuracy.
Yeah, the Sigma's actually, like, the initial given figure is like 2.05, something like that. Yeah, 2.05.
Yeah, it's
25 second reload. So don't turn broadside to a cruiser. In this, if one of these things is pointing their guns at you, I guess.
Reasonably high velocity shells as well, 865 meters per second. I mean, they're not the fastest, but they're not really slow like some of the Americans. And a 25-second reload, so this might actually be quite fun.
And also reasonable dispersion, it looks like.
Yeah.
It's not like we don't already have enough German battleships at higher tiers, but there's a market for it, so I suppose Wargaming will keep finding ways to put new ones in.
So it comes with 24 128mm gun barrels with an 8.3 kilometer base range. Yeah, it's a tier 10 Scharnhorst. That's not necessarily a bad thing. And it has 32mm plating. Thank God.
Yeah. It's also pretty much like, I doubt it's anything other than highly fictionalized, if not completely fictional.
Yeah.
The thing is, right, when you say Scharnhorst, if the chip's actually reasonably accurate with that many guns and good accuracy, that's gonna be so tough for any crew. Well, at least it can't overmatch cruiser, but anyone who shows like broadside is just gonna be instantly deleted.
Or even if you're only firing high explosive, I think it's 3,600 damage per shell. It's firing 16 of them.
Yeah.
Wow. HE of that caliber will penetrate 76mm of armor. So, yeah, bring on your icebreaker bows, motherfuckers.
It's even German HE, right?
Yeah, of course. Hence the 76mm of pen, presumably. Let's have a look at...
Fine, all the people that are rolling around in their Marlboro firing nothing but HE will now get this to fire nothing but HE in as well.
Yeah, because the Japanese only has 16-inch guns. Well, 16-inch, considerably larger than 305, and it gets 68mm of pen. So, yeah, that's taking into account the German HE pen with 76mm on the 305s. So, yeah. Was there anything special about the Edgar?
The Edgar is a super ship. Or a...
with 16mm of armor plating.
Well, they're calling it a super cruiser, but it's not. It's the same 152s. But this is going to have an alternate firing mode.
Yes.
With basically faster reload and higher penetration of its AP shells. / SAP, whatever the exact characteristics.
Yeah, we were actually talking about that with Jedi and I think we're talking about that before the stream. Were you there? I can't remember if you were there.
Yes.
Yes. I don't think they give the alternate shell stats. They only have the maximum.
Because British cruisers and World of Warships obviously are famous for not having high explosive, certainly the light cruisers and the extremely light cruisers, and firing armor piercing instead. And yet, if you go to the Belfast and all of the town class cruisers, and you have a look in the ammunition hoists, all of the ammunition is semi-armor piercing.
Well, that's the thing that I think they decided when these were being introduced that they were going to model I don't think we have SAP in the game either way properly, because you've got the British light cruisers which have SAP, which is called AP but is functionally just AP with better pen and better pen angles, and then you've got the Italian AP which kind of acts more like an HE shell, and it's all very without fire chance, which is so But
we were just trying to get our heads around how can pressing a button make the guns fire faster, and have better penetration. And that's when I thought, well, actually, because that could mean that they are actually loading armor piercing rather than semi-armor piercing when you press that button. Because British ships actually fired semi-armor piercing, contrary to what you actually see here in the game. That doesn't explain how it works in the game. It's not really important because it's an arcade game. You press a button and the guns fire faster and they have better penetration. I was just trying to justify it in my head.
Yep.
I don't get out much.
Just to make it even worse in your hand, keep in mind that if it's like switching firing mode like in the other super cruisers, they switch instantly and don't have to go to a separate reload, right? So when your gun's reloaded, you can choose which mode to fire. So you don't actually switch ammunition unless that is instantaneous.
I've just noticed the Edgar doesn't just fire faster and have higher penetration. It fires faster, it has higher penetration, and the shells do more damage. So it's like the Conda on crack. But it's going to be insanely squishy because it's basically a Minotaur hull with 16 millimeters of plate.
Yeah.
Does it get a smoke consumable?
I think it does.
Yes.
Yes.
And get radar or smoke.
Yeah. Radar or smoke.
Just like mono.
Okay. That might be fun.
Yeah, also.
There's some people that will really enjoy it. But
can you imagine? Have you ever seen the Sailing Robin and his Minotaur?
I think I must have watched a game or two. Yeah.
He is going to need fresh underwear after he sees this blog post.
Yeah, literally the only downside compared to the Minnow is that this thing isn't going to earn you credits, whereas of course the Minnow will do. Or at least they don't earn credits at the moment, the super ships. They only give you XP. But they don't cost you credits either.
I think you might have slightly worse concealment. What do you get 12.1 down to? Should still be going
it's going to be more than 10
9.
kilometers. Be like 10.3, 10.4, something like that. Oh wait, no, you get the module as well, of course, don't you? It might actually be sub 10 kilometers.
Might not be quite as good as a Minotaur, but pretty good concealment still. And I mean, you get 12-kilometer torps now, so even
longer range
better
torpedoes.
torpage. What's also interesting is, like in the text above, I haven't seen anything in the stats for it, but they say it gets more advanced anti-aircraft and anti-submarine armament. What's more advanced anti-submarine armament?
I need to look at the model. I'm not seeing Hedgehog launchers. Although, what is it? There's one of the Dutch ships. I think it might be the Haaland.
I think there's is it the Friesland as well? Yeah, that has the forward-firing.
Yeah. They've actually modelled it, but it's not. It doesn't work like that in game. It still launches them over the sides.
Does it? I'm sure there's one of them where you fire the depth charges over the bow, and it caught me out completely unawares the first time I tried to use it.
Oh yeah. Like Haaland fires depth charges in the front.
It does. Okay. So that might be what they're talking about, but I'm not seeing any Hedgehog launchers on it. I mean, the Belfast had Hedgehog launchers. For anybody who's wondering, a Hedgehog is basically a shape charge mortar bomb. It has to actually hit something in order to, it's not like a depth charge, which is an area of effect weapon. This actually has to hit something for the charge to go off. But they would launch like 40 of them into a pattern in the sea ahead. And they would just drop and hit the submarine and sink it. So that's what we're talking about here, a Hedgehog launcher. Belfast has them. I'm not seeing them on the Edgar. So I don't know what they're talking about.
The Australians went and put some on the back of Matilda tanks.
Yes, they did. Yeah. I remember reading about the madman who designed those things. It was at, I think it was Bletchley Park. There's a book, Churchill's Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare. All the mad stuff that they came up with for sabotage operations, like explosive rats. You hear about those? They would smuggle them into the French resistance workers who were working in these factories, and they would just drop these explosive dead rats around the place. So when the caretakers and the janitors were sweeping up and they were picking up all the dead rats, what did they do with them? They threw them in the boilers. Then the boilers would explode and sabotage the factory. The guy that came, it's great. The guy that came up with that invented this spigot mortar launcher, and he was just blowing chunks out of the stately home gardens You'd be driving into work in the morning at this old estate house, and like suddenly this bomb would go off in the middle of the road as this mad old bastard was testing his spigot launcher with his shape charge warheads. That became the Hedgehog launcher and replaced depth charges. Great book, Churchill's Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare. It's fantastic. Completely off topic again, but yeah, it's worth talking about. But I'm not seeing them on the Edgar. I knew we got here somehow. Shit we're looking at. Yes, there it is.
Yeah, there's not really much else. I mean, it says we're going to have, I think Mino has 10-kilometer torque, so it seems like 12?
Yeah,
it's 12. I'm looking at the, I don't know those are AA guns, not secondaries. They look like the Italian Otto Melara.
Yeah, there was a thread, actually, that's reminded me, there was a thread on Reddit about that, there's the
Italian
secondaries, which it totally makes sense to be on a. Like I don't know. Did the Royal Navy ever actually use those? There was a comment that they were used on one class of frigates, and then they didn't actually name the class of frigates. So I don't really have any more information than that.
They weren't on Type 42s. They weren't on Type 22s. They didn't have them on Type 21s. They didn't have them on Leanders. They didn't have them, and I'm going back to the 50s now. And I don't remember seeing them on. Well, obviously, I didn't serve in the Royal Navy in the 50s, but we still had a couple of ships from the 50s in service when I joined in 1989. Although the Leanders were rapidly being phased out. But certainly in the last.
For people that are not aware, this is the post-war Leanders rather than the World War II Leanders.
Yes, these are the. Because the Leanders were the last all-gun frigates that we had, although they ended up fitting them with Ikara missile launchers, all kinds of really bad early Cold War missile systems. But no, I don't remember seeing. I dare say somebody in the comments said, "Well, actually, Jingles, the one and only Type 82 destroyer was prototype." Yeah, that may be the case, but certainly I don't recall ever seeing those Italian secondary mounts on any Royal Navy ship. I mean, we knew how to make our own guns. We didn't need to buy them from the Italians.
So yeah, that is definitely a peculiarity.
I mean, it doesn't have secondaries like the Minotaur. This is all anti-air. It has 6 times 2 152mm anti-air guns.
Yeah, those are the main batteries.
Oh,
they're dual purpose.
Yeah.
So those are just the 8 times 160s.
So where is it? Main battery.
76.2 mils.
Yeah, 76.2s, 8 of those, that's it. And obviously the dual purpose main battery guns. Number of explosions, 7. What? 7 explosions in a salvo. From 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. From 12 guns. 12 guns only generate 7 flak explosions. Riddle me that one, Wargaming.
Wargaming maths, don't worry about it.
Yeah, those are still not reloaded, don't worry.
Oh, that's right, yeah. Because that's right. That's right, yes. Because the AA guns don't actually load until the enemy aircraft enters the firing range. But how does that relate to dual-purpose guns that have been shooting since the battle started? Do they have to stop and reload when the aircraft enter the firing? Sorry, this is another one of my personal bugbears. You two, I'm sure, are probably aware of this. At the beginning of the battle, when it's action stations, and everybody rushes and mans their action stations and loads their guns, everybody except the anti-aircraft crew, they finish their cigarette, finish off their game of hookers, drink their cocoa, and they don't actually start loading their guns until they see an aircraft.
They've just got a really good union, Jingles. That's what it is.
I don't know, because they have to unload them once the aircraft is out of range again, right? It's not like they keep them loaded just because they've loaded them.
Health and safety at work. Those things explode. They're very dangerous.
Can't keep a loaded gun around. I mean, come on.
Christ. Yes. Anyway, have I complained about aircraft carriers enough for this one video? Or do I need to do it some more?
We'll get you back for an episode. And we'll just shut up and let you talk about aircraft carriers for the entire thing.
Yeah, so we should have discussed super carriers with you, I guess.
Don't get me started. Canberra bombers.
For sure.
Canberra bombers and HMS fucking Eagle. Really? Really? You couldn't give them the Blackburn Buccaneers that it actually had. You had to make shit up. But then again, they've already got the Canberra model in the game, don't they? They don't have to do a new model for a Buccaneer. I'm not saying the Royal Navy didn't have Canberras. We had 4 of them, which we used at Fradu as target tugs and simulated Russian bombers for fleet exercises. They never launched off the carriers. They were based at Yeovilton. But never let little things like the facts get in the way. Hey, wargaming.
Next, you're going to tell me that they didn't magically regenerate after being shot down?
Oh, no, that part's true. Everybody knows that aircraft carriers had magic aircraft factories under the decks.
It's the early precursor of the technology that the USS Voyager used to magically make shuttles between episodes.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Although I can't help but find it amusing that aircraft carriers have got aircraft producing factories powered by pixie dust between their decks to keep regenerating aircraft as the battle goes on, but nobody else has anti-aircraft gun manufacturing factories powered by pixie dust between their decks to replace all of the AA guns that get knocked out as the battle goes on. That doesn't seem fair.
Oh, that would just be ridiculous, Jingles. Come on now, be reasonable.
Okay, I'll stop complaining about carriers. Although I'm going to need more beer. Okay, I'm nearly run out of beer, so I'm going to have to keep complaining about carriers. It's not my fault. These are the rules.
I can live with that.
I think we're about done, though, aren't we?
Yeah,
well,
you haven't.
The Awami to talk about.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. The alleged potential Yamato design that doesn't have the Yamato's guns and has less of the ones that it does have.
May or may not be, it might have gone through the Bureau of World of Warships design process and not bear that much resemblance to the thing it's based on. But so it's the same 410 mils you find on Amagi, I presume. Only got 8 of them, though.
It's tier 9, by the way. We should point this out. It's not tier 10. It's not sitting right next to the Yamato, but it is kind of comparable to the Izumo. Although it doesn't have turrets arranged like the Izumo. It has turrets arranged in a traditional 2 up front, 2 at the back. So it has 1 less gun than the Izumo, but the guns are probably more usable. It's intended to be a close quarters brawler, apparently. 100 is it 100mm secondaries with a Japanese quarter caliber penetration buff for 100mm guns?
Yes. It has the magic secondaries.
155s and then 1600mm barrels.
So 7-kilometer base range. So we're not talking Germans here or anything. 32mm plating, so fairly standard. Be interesting to see what the belt armor looks like. It looks similar to the Amagi. Hopefully it's better.
I mean, if it has Imagi Citadel protection, then it could make a very good brawler, potentially.
Yeah, it might be a fun. I mean, a brawling, which is the... Oh, God. There's one Japanese premium battleship.
The Key.
That has the Key, with 100mm secondaries. That is a surprisingly good brawler. And this may be more of the same.
The Key is a bit lacking in the armor department, but if they've shored that up a bit more, then that could work. Like, you have torpedoes again, you have...
I was about to ask, does it also get torpedoes? Yep, okay, good.
Even 12-kilometer torps.
Yeah.
Wow.
Those, I think those must be the same as the Shima's 12-kilometer torps.
Yeah, and they're fast as well. Well, not...
67 knots, they're not slow.
They're not slow. They're not... they're not Swedish, but they're not slow. A 2-minute reload. That could get you into trouble, because if you launch those at 12 kilometers, they're not going to be ready when you're at 4 kilometers.
Have good trigger discipline with those.
Yeah.
But they hit like a truck,
Oh, yeah.
It's like...
That's like Russian torpedo damage. That's... Wow. Nearly 24,000.
Yeah.
And it's 2 quadruple launches. That's nice.
Probably one per side.
Yeah.
100k damage per, probably a bit less than that when you have the
torpedo damage reduction.
Yeah, but
the guns are not terribly accurate. They're not we're not talking.
Sigma.
Yeah, we're not talking Eisenhower levels of inaccuracy here, but they're okay.
For only 8 barrels at this tier, it seems a little low, but it might get changed later. We'll see. I mean, it's also a 25-second reload, which is reasonably speedy.
Oh, there it is. I was
That up.
Yeah, I was wondering what that was. Yeah, 25 seconds. So that's not terrible. Reasonable accuracy, limited number of barrels, but a fast reload. Yeah, it's workable.
It's a 35-second turret traverse time for 180 degrees. So actually, you could easily, without much penalty, take the 5th slot equipment that increases reload at the cost of turret traverse. It would put you up at around what everyone else has at sort of 46 seconds.
Yeah. So you wouldn't really be losing out, and you get an insanely fast reload for a 16-inch gun-armed battleship.
That would probably take you down to, 22, 23 seconds? It'd be 22 point something for 25 base reload. So
as long as it doesn't get down to 2 seconds, we're okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Fire the fucking gun! Oh, I give up.
Yeah, by the way, since Jenna just said something like the torpedo salvo is about 100,000 points of damage, do you know how torpedoes work in this game, Jingles? Because I only found out last summer.
Do share us with us.
So basically, when they say torpedo damage, that's not actually the maximum torpedo damage. The damage is alpha divided by 3 plus splash damage. So each torpedo has an alpha damage value and a splash damage value, right? And the maximum torpedo damage has nothing to do with the maximum. It's, alpha divided by 3 plus splash. So you ask yourself, what damage does it do now then? Well, if you hit the torpedo in the bow, it deals 16.5% alpha damage, but it deals the full splash damage to the bow and also the full splash damage to the center, right? If you hit it in the citadel, then you only do alpha damage, but you do a full alpha damage, but reduced by the torpedo damage reduction. And if you hit a torpedo in the midsection of a destroyer, you deal just 33% of your alpha damage.
I'm sorry I asked.
It's, this is just a magical number, the maximum torpedo damage. That has nothing to do with what it claims it does. And nobody knows actually what splash and, alpha damage on a torpedo is. Yeah.
Oh, God. From this moment forward, we promise to proceed with greater transparency and better communication. God.
I think they must have just had a particularly heavy day with the vodka when they decide how torpedo damage works.
I'm sure there's some logic in there somewhere. I just don't have time to analyse.
I wouldn't go so far.
Life is too short.
We're not being paid for this shit, so forget it.
I need coffee.
Anyway, go with a drink.
So hooray! So are we done? Is that it?
Yeah, I think that's everything. So where can we find you, Mr. Jingles, as if people didn't already know?
Oh, I believe if you search for the Mighty Jingles on YouTube, you might get a hit or two.
One or two.
I've had some fairly popular videos this month. I was actually looking at my channel analytics the other day. Well, I put a video up just over a week ago. It's already had nearly 150,000 views. Of course, that wasn't incomparable.
That helps.
In a team full of bots, single-handedly slaughtering the entire enemy team by himself. So, yeah. And I did a War Thunder video that's gotten nearly... Wow. Okay. I put a War Thunder video up that got more than 100,000 views. What the hell? Oh, wait,
it was a great video.
It's a KV2, that explains it.
Just as much a meme in that game as any other.
They've actually, because you know how they can just keep nerfing high explosive damage in World of Tanks? They've actually buffed it in War Thunder. They've introduced an overpressure mechanic that just kills the crew.
Oh, yeah, I'm hearing about that, yeah.
War Thunder, they get a lot wrong, but they get some things very, very right. Oh, God, when you're having more fun in War Thunder than you are with a KV2 in World of Tanks, you know something's seriously wrong.
Yeah.
Right, anyway, I need to... I'm doing a turkey curry It's the final leftovers from my Christmas turkey. I've had the legs in the freezer for, well, a month and a half, funnily enough, along with a whole bunch of turkey stock. So I'm using the stock to make the curry. And I've been slow cooking the turkey legs. So nice. A nice hot turkey madras.
Will we see that on your cooking channel?
Well, I'll have to buy another turkey. But I did something the other day that you'll probably see on the Home of the Gnome channel. It was a buffalo chicken hot sauce cheese dip. So I slow cooked 5 chicken breasts. So they basically just fell apart. And then I mixed them up in the stand mixer with a whole 440-gram tub of Philadelphia cream cheese, a whole 400-gram tub of sour cream, a 300-gram block of pepper jack chili cheese, a small block of Wensleydale cheddar, and a block of blue cheese, all crumbled up, and mixed all of that up. And then I put it in a pan, and then I covered the top with the same amount again of all of the other cheese that I've already listed. And then the whole thing went into the oven.
I'm having a heart attack just hearing about this.
The whole thing went into the oven until the top had turned into a molten cheese lava bed. And then I pulled it out, oven gloves on obviously, took it upstairs, sat it down in front of the big screen TV with a packet of cheesy Doritos to scoop the dip up with. And oh, God, it was amazing. I couldn't eat it all, of course. So I had the other half the next day. And it's just as good cold as it was hot. So, yeah, that was glorious. I could feel my arteries hardening just talking about it. But it was so good. Oh, almost forgot an entire bottle of Frank's hot sauce as well. So, yeah, that was definitely doing that again. In fact, I've just reordered all of the ingredients. So I'll be doing that for my housewarming if I eventually ever get to move into this new place. Anyway, I must cut and run now.
Yeah.
I'm gasping for a cup of coffee, and I need to get that curry done. So thanks for having me along, and
thanks for joining us.
Probably won't catch you next time, but take care anyway. See you guys.
Bye.
Bye.